Can we? I don't know.
Okay, Peace Corps Togo, whenever you're ready. I already did a little introduction to the call, and I'm ready to present the PowerPoint when you guys are ready, unless you want to do introductions first.
Yeah, we're just moving around a little bit. Yeah, we can go ahead and do introductions, and then we can start the PowerPoint. How does that sound?
Great.
Okay. Changing this. Destiny, introduction.
Sure. Okay. Hey everyone, my name is Destiny. I don't think you can see me, but I'm a extension volunteer. I'm the health PCBL. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm talking. And yeah, like I said, in my third year, I already did my 2 years at site, and now I'm living and working in Lome in the Bureau. Can't wait to see you guys.
Okay. Hi everybody. My name is Chelsea. I'm the media coordinator here in Lome. I was in the north as an English and gender education volunteer. Teach.
Yeah. Hi everybody. I'm glad that we're back together again. My name is Ty. I am the third year gender PCBL. I spent 2 years in northern Togo. I was an education volunteer, and I decided to do a third year here in Lome, and I do gender work. Okay. So yeah, we're ready to start. We're ready for the PowerPoint. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me know when you can see it.
Okay, we got it on our end.
Great.
Okay, perfect. So, let's see. This is for them. I think it's already working.
Just ask if she can make it full screen.
Oh, can you, Rebecca, can you full screen the PowerPoint for me, please?
Okay.
Okay, so let's see, there we go. Language learning, pre-departure, and during service. So welcome everybody, bonsoir. We've introduced ourselves. We want to thank you for joining us again. We're excited to do the second conference call, and we're excited to see how many participants that we have. I see 21 participants, that's great. But before we start talking about the linguistic landscape of Togo, which is very complex, we have some exciting news, so let's go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. So this is actually Peace Corps Week, whether you know it or not. It's the Peace Corps was signed into action or created on March 1st. So we're celebrating Peace Corps Week, and there was a video competition, and the theme of this year's video competition was A Day in the Life. And a Peace Corps Togo volunteer, Abby Johnson, who's a third year in the Kara region, she is a finalist for the competition. So I have this this video. We can try and play it. If the sound doesn't work, it's available on YouTube though. Yeah. So it doesn't seem like the sound is coming through. So you can find it on YouTube if you look up Togo Abby Johnson 2019 Peace Corps Week Video Challenge. and you'll be able to see it. It outlines a day in the life of a volunteer teacher here in Togo, and this teacher is also doing a lot of development work in his village with his community, and he's inspiring leadership. And we're proud of Abby, and we're proud to be a finalist in the video. For the
Sorry,
video.
out of curiosity, was anyone else able to hear audio on the video? No. Okay. It was just me.
Okay. So you got a little preview, and you can go look at it on YouTube and get an idea of what it's all about. So yeah, we're ready to move forward, Rebecca. I also wanted to take a little bit of an opportunity to talk to you about Learning Space, which will be available to you tomorrow, Friday. Learning Space is an online platform that Peace Corps uses, and this is the second year that Peace Corps Togo has been using it. Thanks, Stephanie Bird, for the YouTube clip, for the link. So basically tomorrow, once you get your login info and everything, you'll go into your learning space and you'll see that there's a course set up for you. And in this course, it's divided between tasks, useful links, and contact info. So just to briefly go over it, your tasks will be things that you need to complete before leaving the United States. So for example, the first thing that you'll have to do is a questionnaire. And this questionnaire we'll take it into consideration when we're thinking about where you'll be placed in country, and also which homestay family you'll stay with during your 3 months of training at PST. And also there's a link for safe arrival email. So when you arrive in country, there will be an email sent out to 2 different people saying that you've arrived safely. Just because you won't have a lot of opportunities to contact home, communication will be a little hampered within the first few days because you'll be very busy. This task that we ask you to do is to upload some documents, so a revised resume, an aspiration statement, and then we're going to ask you to upload a passport photo of yourself, headshot. All of these things are going to help you transition really easily to Togo, and training-wise, it's also going to help us eliminate some busy work, so to say. And then task 3, you'll see tomorrow, you have sector-specific tasks. So whether you're Teach, whether you're Pages, or Chess, you'll have separate folders, and once you open those folders, there will be different documents within the folders. Every sector has a specific homework assignment that we've given you, and ideally, what's going to happen is you'll complete this homework assignment before the first week of April, and in April, we'll do individual Skype calls with the sector. So all of the education sector will do a Skype call, and we'll review the homework that we gave you. And this was created by volunteers, basically to give you a better idea of what your work is going to look like once you come in. So we want you to have a good idea of what it's going to be, and also a head start in your work. You'll also find useful vocabulary for French learning. So for your sector, for education, you'll find a vocabulary list for words that you will use at school, in the classroom, and all of these are very tailored to fit Togo. Your 4th task that you will ask you to do, and this is all in Learning Space. I just kind of want to talk about it a little bit so that you're ready to see it tomorrow. The 4th task that we have is to download the VRF. The VRF is the volunteer reporting form, and it's what you're going to use to submit all your reports to Peace Corps. It's a special program, and I sent like a link and download information. Sometimes you'll have to download Silverlight, but we want you to download it before you get to Togo because internet isn't always reliable in Togo, so we don't want you to spend hours downloading the VRF when it takes, I think when I did it in the States, it literally took under 10 seconds. It was so quick.
Ty, can you mention that if they're planning to bring a laptop, they can download the VRF, but that there'll be other computers available to use if they are not bringing one?
Yeah, so if you bring your own laptop, you can definitely download the VRF application straight onto your laptop. But if you aren't bringing a laptop, we do have computers that will be available to you in your region where you will be able to submit your reporting forms. So if you don't bring a laptop, you'll be totally covered. And then the last thing that we're going to ask you to do is to request an account on Peace Corps Live. Peace Corps Live is a platform for sharing documents and resources that other Peace Corps countries are doing. So anytime I want to do a training, I always look on Peace Corps Live first, so I can just generally search the topic of my training, and then I'll see what other countries are doing and see if it's any way relatable to what I could do in Togo. So those are all the tasks that we ask you to do before coming, just so we start off on a good foot and that we're ahead of the race. After the tasks, you'll see some resources. There's a lot of information there that you'll want to read about what's going to happen the day you arrive in Togo, right when you get off the plane, who's going to be there, what are you going to do, how can you prepare for your first day in Togo, your first weeks in Togo. So you'll want to read through all of the resources that we put there because there's a lot of valuable information. And then useful links would be our Facebook, Instagram, and website. And then the contact info are some contacts that you might want to have before coming to Togo with respect to security clearance in DC or anything like that. So those are all stateside contact numbers. Rebecca, is there anything that you think I should add on Learning Space?
No, I think you're good, but once you all see the course, if you have any questions, you can direct them to me.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a lot of, I just gave you a lot of information, but it is very clearly lined out on Learning Space, and it won't be a problem. Yeah, so let's go ahead and go into the rest of the PowerPoint. So today we're talking about language learning pre-departure and during service. So in Togo, ici on parle français. The official language of Togo is French, but it isn't Parisian French. There's a lot of differences between West African French and French that you would find in Paris or in France. One of those big differences would be we use the informal tu a lot more than we use vous, which is formal to mean you. So the way that we talk is very familial. We have, I can call a stranger my brother, or, as a woman in the market, I can call her mama or big sister or something like that. So our French is naturally more informal in Togo. And I'd also have to say that the accent, the West African accent, is very clear and very slow. So if you have experience in French, you'll be able to adapt easily. If you don't have experience in French, it's a really good bridge to start learning the language. So besides French, il y a plusieurs d'autres langues. So there are many, many, many other languages that are spoken in Togo. We have two national languages. The first one is Ebe, and the second one is Kabye. So a national language is just a language that's very influential. It's used widely throughout the country. Both Ebe and Kabye are taught in some schools. And Ebe is more of a southern language, even though you'll find it throughout the entire Togo. Ebe is definitely a southern language. Here in Lomé, where we're at right now, that's the language that's used here. And then Kabye is more towards the north, central, and Kara. You'll find a lot of Kabye, but no matter where you're at, you're going to hear these two languages throughout the country. And apart from those two languages, we also have local languages. And we can go ahead and go to the next slide. Yeah, so there we go. We have a ton of local languages in Togo. The most comprehensive list that I have found is 44 local languages, but I personally know of a few local languages that weren't on that list. So I would go as far to say is that upwards to 60 local languages are spoken throughout Togo. And the unique thing about this is that most of our languages are indigenous. So only around 4 or 5 of the languages you'll find out of the 60 are going to be imported languages. And a lot of those languages come from Nigeria. The Fulani people, the largest nomadic group in the world, their language is also kind of throughout Togo, which we count as an imported language. But then we have, what's fascinating is we have some languages that have below 1,000 speakers. So it's just a very small community that you're going to find this language in, and you could go 3 kilometers to the west of this community and it's going to be a completely different culture, it's going to be a completely different language. So the first map that you'll see on this slide is a map of Togo, and once you're able to look at this PowerPoint will be on Learning Space, so you'll be able to look at it better. It's a map of some of the languages that are spoken and where they're found throughout Togo, and I think it's really interesting, but it's not a complete list. It is pretty comprehensive, but it's not complete. The second item that you see on the slide there, that's a drawing. That is a tool that we use in Peace Corps Togo. That's actually a drawing of my village. It's a map of my village that I served in the north. My village is named Korbongu. And we do community mapping so that we can know the important spots in our village. So I've mapped out all the markets, all the schools, all the influential, like where my key work partners live, all the pumps, the churches, everything like this, because it helps us to adapt and to integrate and to know our community. But what's interesting is on my map, I also put all the local languages that are spoken and where they're spoken. So near the mosque, you'll find a lot of Kodakoli, because Kodakolis are vastly Muslim people. So as you can see, like in the red where I have bubbled, those are all the local languages that you'll be able to find in my village. So from my house, with this map, leaving my house, I know I'm going to pass by which local languages, and I'm going to prepare myself to be able to salue, which means to greet each person in their local language as a key to integration. So once you arrive and once you go to your site for your site visit, you'll also sketch out a map of your community. And I would highly recommend that you map your languages on there too, because there won't just be one local language in your community, there will be many. I think I had 5 or 6 local languages, and I learned how to say hi, thank you, and see you tomorrow, and like all of them. Okay, let's go ahead and move forward. So requirements, language requirements. You do not have to know any French before coming to Togo. However, we highly, highly, highly encourage you to start learning some French as much as you can before leaving. Before we had this Skype call about language learning at the very end of our series of calls, and we decided to move it up because we really want to encourage invitees, you guys, to start learning French as soon as possible. So we ask you this because in order to swear in as a volunteer, you have to have a French level of at least intermediate high. So it's at intermediate high, you're able to function in the country freely. You're able to mitigate security risks. You're able to express needs. You're able to explain, if you're sick. So this is where this is the functioning level of French that you'll need to have in Togo to function and to be a volunteer. If you do not reach intermediate high, you can't swear in as a volunteer. We have 3 language proficiency interviews, or rather we have language proficiency interviews, LPIs. You have them placed throughout your pre-service training and throughout your service to monitor your level of French that you're at. So when you first arrive, we'll take a baseline LPI to say what level of French you're at. Right before you do your site visit, we'll do another one. When you come back from site visit, we want to see if your French has improved any. And right before you swear in as a volunteer, we'll do one last LPI. But what exactly can you do now to learn French? So getting started, here are 6 recommendations that PCVs have in general for what can I do right now to start learning French when I'm not in a formal class. So part of language learning is just getting used to hearing the sounds that are made, getting used to the way that the language is, the rhythm of the language. So radio, the BBC, you can find several radio stations, news stations that are broadcast in French. And even if it's just playing it in the background, it's going to help you immensely. There are several apps like Duolingo. When Destiny and I came, our stage had to do Duolingo to practice French. It was mandatory before coming to Togo, and it helped a lot. I would say it'll help build your vocabulary. There's tons of apps though, not besides Duolingo. Podcasts, audiobooks. When I was learning French, I learned French before coming, but when I was learning, one of the things that I used is I would listen to audiobooks, popular audiobooks I already knew. So, for example, I listened to Harry Potter in French, and I already knew the storyline because I'm so used to Harry Potter. So it was more of helping me learn the language because I already knew what was happening. So it's just also a tool that you may want to use. French movies with subtitles in English, or English movies, start watching them with subtitles in French. You're going to start catching on to the dialogue, and then every once in a while you'll pick up a word in French, and you'll be like, oh yeah, that means this, and you'll start getting the hang of it. Websites, there are tons of French learning websites. There is on Learning Space, when you get access to Learning Space tomorrow, in the resources section, there is a section for a section of resources that you can use to learn French that actually list out, these are the great podcasts volunteers use to learn French. These are the great websites that you can use to learn French. And one of the surprising ones that I found was Pinterest, because Pinterest has a lot of graphics that explain grammar rules of French. So volunteers were using Pinterest in order to learn French grammar. So tomorrow when you get access to Learning Space, be sure to look for the French resources. So continuing education. Once you swear in, once you have the intermediate high level of French and you're sworn as a volunteer, we don't want you to stop learning French, and we don't want you to stop learning local language at the same time. We want to encourage you to keep always learning more about language. So we have some tools set into place for your advantage. So the first one would be the language tutor allowance. Once you're at site, you can scout and find a language tutor that you like, and Peace Corps Togo will reimburse you up to 9,000 CFA per month. So that's 9,000 CFA is about how many US dollars? 18-ish dollars. And you would easily be able to do 2 really long sessions or maybe 4 short sessions with a local language or a French tutor. So you can ask for language tutor reimbursement up to the last 6 months of your service.
I think at least the way I did my language at site, I normally did 1,000 per session, so I was able to do 9 sessions in a month with that 9,000. So it's like a discussion between you and your tutor how much you're willing to pay for those sessions.
And you can go above 9,000 CFA per month. It's just Peace Corps only reimburses up to 9,000. There's the IRC, the Information Resource Center, which is highly underutilized by Peace Corps volunteers in Togo. The IRC, you can request documents from there that'll be mailed to you wherever you pick up your mail at in country. These can be language documents, really any kind of manual that you need. But for this purpose, we will talk about language learning self-study documents. We have a ton of them and a bunch of languages that have been, totally produced by Peace Corps Togo. So, continuing your education, you can always remember that you can always request more documents from the IRC. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the benefits of continuing your education in French and or local language. So the biggest benefit is going to be integration. Like I said, when I walked past, my village was a MOBA speaking village, but when I walked past Ebe speaking people and I was able to greet them in Ebe, it was like I was a part of their community as well. So I didn't limit myself to only one local language, and that helped me to integrate into many different subgroups and subcultures into my village. And don't forget that once you're integrated, there's also a level of security that's going to come with it. So if you're well integrated, you're also going to be well protected by your community. The second benefit that I would have to point out to continuing your language education during service is you'll have more opportunities to work with different counterparts in your community. So, for example, in my village, I had, Centerville, this downtown of my village, and then I had a mountain next to it, and on top of the mountain was a neighboring village that was still in my work zone. And on top of this mountain, they had a really big problem with potable water, clean water to drink. So when I went up there to work on the mountain, a lot of people didn't speak French. They only spoke the local language, MOBA. So me speaking MOBA, going up onto the mountain, allowed me to find more work partners that I can help disseminate certain informations that will benefit the community in the long run. And the third thing that I will add is when you understand a local language, you understand culture. Because the way that we speak and the language, our native language, kind of crafts the way that we see the world and the way that we envision the world. So just to give you an example, in my local language, MOBA, which was also Chelsea's local language, when you say, hey, how are you? You don't say, how are you? You say, how's your health? And you'll find because people don't ask, how are you? They ask how your health is. You'll find that health is a very important theme all throughout Togo. And I think a lot of local languages also ask the same question, how's your health, as a way of saying hi to you. And I think once you get integrated, you'll realize that if you say, I'm not feeling well, you're automatically excused. Like the point is that your health is going to come first. And there's even a phrase that's said all throughout Togo, santé avant tout, your health before everything else. So once you learn the local language, or once you start understanding, you're going to really understand on a new level the culture of the village you're living in and the culture of the country you're serving in. So let's advance a little bit. So we have another video, and these videos, it was produced by a PCV here in Togo for the UN's Native Tongue Day or Native Language Day. And it basically showcases just examples of some of the local languages that you'll find in Togo. So in this one we have Ewe, Kabye, Moba, and Besar. And the cool thing is that this video with all these different examples of local language was taken at the same school within the same class. So all these people are classmates, but they all come from different backgrounds and speak different languages, which just speaks to the complexity and diversity of the linguistical landscape of Togo. So whenever you have learning space, whenever you get on learning space tomorrow, these videos will be available, and you'll be able to listen to them as many times as you want, just to get the hang of hearing local languages and seeing the difference. But because we can't hear the sound on it, I thought that maybe us as volunteers could give you our favorite or maybe our most used phrase that we used in our local language. So I will start. As I said, I volunteered in the far north, so my local language was Moba, and that's what we used in my village. And the phrase that I used the most was Mbwa kami lingen pa, which means I like spicy food, because I love spicy food, but they never believe you when you say you want spicy. So Mbwa kami lingen pa.
Okay, so I have the same local language as Thai. It's also Moba. A phrase that I often said was Meninka. It's not a problem. You could also say, I also said often, "Mboa chichabali." I want bean beignets. It's my favorite food.
Food, yeah.
Nice. In my community, it is majority Kavyé. That's the language that we speak, but there's like 7 other local languages. But one of my favorite things about Kavyé is when you start learning it, you learn the word alafia, and that's typically the response to like, how are you? And you say alafia. But as I've like learned more Kavyé, it's not so much like I'm well, like as the response. It's kind of how you say alafia that indicates what's going on. So if you're surprised about something, you say, oh, alafia. Or if like someone has really, made you angry, you're like, alafia. Like, it's just a way to express emotion without really even saying anything. It's really kind of spectacular.
And a little bit of eve, a phrase that I would have used in my community a lot, was maple ejipono, which is I want to buy salted bread.
Salted bread.
Yeah.
See, the food is the essential in local language. It's the first thing you learn. So this video will be available for you tomorrow. I think there's part 2 on the next slide. Yeah, this is part 2. And then, so you'll be able to view both of these videos tomorrow. And then in part 2, there's an example of, let's see, Kodakoli, which is spoken in the Central region. Capital, it would be Sokode. And then Akposo, which was in Jane's village a little bit. There's some Akposo, which is in the Plateau region mostly. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. It's just asking for questions, but before we take questions, I thought maybe we could talk about the French coming in.
Yeah.
Did you know French before? How was PST? And then how do you feel now?
Sure, yeah, I can start with that. I came in with basically 0 French. I could count to 10 because of the application Duolingo, and I could say yellow. For some reason, the word yellow in French really stuck in my head. So I started off very much at the bottom here. When I finished PST, I was able to get that inner high level. Sorry, I was trying to think of the word in English. See, sometimes you can't think of English. I got that inner high level, and as I progressed throughout my service, I took full advantage of the 9,000 every month for tutoring reimbursement, and I continued my French tutoring during that time. I actually, before I started my 3rd year, I went on vacation alone in France, and I was completely fine getting around. Definitely don't have a French accent, but they understood me. Like, there's enough Americans that vacation there that they get the accent, and I was fine. Yeah, and so last time I took an LPI, I was at advanced mid. So I've progressed during my service from, inter high to advanced mid. So as long as you keep working on it, it definitely progresses throughout your service. And I still feel really comfortable and confident in my French abilities.
Yeah, I also started off with no French. But before, I enjoy learning languages, so before coming, I made it a point to practice French using Duolingo and watching films, reading, and because of that, when I came to Togo, I didn't start off as a novice low, I started off as novice high, and that put me in a more advanced class, and I think I was able to learn more quickly the French that I needed in my village. So I highly recommend learning, and that's been my biggest thing throughout my services. It would be easier if I had known French sooner. So I stress that.
Yeah, sorry, continue.
Just like a tip, I think I would say if you're starting off learning French now, my suggestion is that you don't focus so much on grammar for the time being. I would say begin by learning phrases and vocabulary. And when you come here, your teacher will teach you a lot of grammar. It's not productive to get hung up on grammar when you don't have a teacher.
Yeah, and yeah, it's definitely in your benefit, like in your best interest to start early because PST is already pretty difficult. Not that it's difficult, but it's just long days and it's hot, you're not used to the heat yet, and you know, you're living with people that you don't know and you're trying to get to know. It's already kind of challenging and you're very much outside your comfort zone. And so if you're able to start earlier and kind of get the language, you know, under control, that'll just help you in your transition. Definitely recommend that.
So I came in with French already. I was a French literature major in university. So I want to add, though, if you come in at a high level of French, or if you obtain a high level of French near midway through PST, there's a conversation that you can have whether you want to stay in French classes or if you would like to go ahead and start local language classes. So that's more like a conversation that you should have with staff at Peace Corps. Do you feel comfortable leaving French? Are you comfortable at this level, or would you like to continue? Or would you like to go straight into local language? So I came in and went into local language pretty quickly. But really, the French that I had coming in and the French that I have now is completely different. My accent's different, my vocabulary is different. Anytime I Skype with old French major friends, they're always like, wow, you sound so African. And so you'll have an adjustment period, but it won't be difficult for you, I don't think. So yeah, let's hear your questions, guys. You've been pretty quiet. So Michael asks, do you still recommend learning French phrases even though Gaelic French is completely different? Yes, absolutely. So there are phrases that you're still going to use, and it's not 100% different. You should still start learning French phrases, even though the French that's taught is standard Parisian French. It will be you can transfer those skills to Togolese French.
How is French? Excuse me. How is French taught during PST classrooms? Okay, so in PST, the way French will be taught to you, you'll be placed either in a home or outside under a tree. Either way, you'll be shaded, and you'll have a teacher, and I think the largest class will be maybe 5 people, and it's arranged by your French level coming in, and in some cases your sector. So small classroom settings.
Okay, next question. Do you have any song artist recommendations from Togo that we can start listening to now?
Great question.
First thing that pops to my mind is Too Fun. I don't know if you guys have any additions.
Yeah, we're going to.
There's so much.
We're going to type some names for you.
Exactly. Too Fun.
Too
I think
Fun.
probably the most famous.
Yeah.
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 I'd say next would be Almok.
Mhm.
But these artists sing mostly in Eve. There's like French mixed in.
Oh, French. I mean,
Does he do some French?
Yeah.
There are also a lot of there are a lot of people that are residing in France, but are of African descent that have become really popular in France. For example, you can put Kublak.
So let's just do Togolese. And then, which one did you say?
Kublak, K-E,
K-E.
capital B, Black.
Also
Cameroon.
Black M.
There's just a lot of music in West Africa in general.
Damso.
So these would be like West African singers, artists.
What's the name of this kind of genre? What is it, African High Life? Is that what it's called?
No, this is like West African pop and rap.
Okay. You could probably Spotify some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see. We'll be learning French and local languages at the same time. Okay, yeah. So thanks for your question. No, you will not be learning French and local language at the same time. When you arrive, you'll do a Eve boot camp just because you'll be living in a training site that speaks Eve. But it's not a prolonged session. You'll do a boot camp to learn the necessities in Eve, and then you'll go to French. But you don't do French and local language at the same time.
Yeah, you're probably just gonna naturally learn Eve anyway. Like everyone in your house that you'll be living in will speak Eve amongst each other. It's only when they speak to you probably that they'll be speaking French, so you're gonna pick it up.
All right, well, Dimitri, does Spotify work in Togo?
I think
Yes.
you have to have premium though for it to work in Togo. I think if it's the free one, it doesn't. Is that what I've been hearing?
I'm not sure. I don't have. If you're going to download music onto your phone, you have to have Spotify Premium, which means you pay monthly. Otherwise, I don't think your internet connection will usually be strong enough to connect to Spotify. So you'll need to have the free version. Just won't work by nature of not having 3G.
I subscribe to Apple Music, and I've done that for my 3 years here, and it's been great.
Yeah.
So I think if you subscribe to Spotify, it'll be the same thing.
Does Peace Corps suggest individuals for tutors during your service? And some, not really. It's usually up to you to find someone. When I was in my village, it's pretty easy to pinpoint people that are educated in your village and that speak French well enough. And my recommendation would just be go to a middle school or a high school, and somebody there would be happy to help you.
A lot of you might be replacement volunteers, and so the person before you who's already there and knows the community really well could probably recommend someone to you as well. Will we be tested in French and local languages at the end of the training? French, yes, you'll be tested 3 times, right?
4 times during PST.
French 4 times, and if you test if you test out of French, if you hit the enter high level that you have to hit to go to your site to swear in, then you have the option of doing your local language. And so if you get to local language level, you have the option of taking the test in local language if your local language test takers are available. Because sometimes you might be learning your community might have a local language that the language facilitators might not speak, might not be able to test you on. So it kind of depends on the languages available and the trainers who are there.
Okay, so let's do this. What do you guys suggest for cell service, etc.? Bringing a phone and buying a SIM card. So, yeah, we are going to cover that later. Peace Corps will give you a phone once you arrive, and you have to keep this phone and this SIM card active so Peace Corps can contact you at all times. But we will cover that later on in another call. Great question. We're going to put it on the parking lot, though. Sorry, it's a funny question. It's a real question.
French is so real. The struggle is real.
Should we read the
Yeah.
try to answer it?
So the question is basically, are there any suggestions for how to learn the pronunciation of French words? And the comparison is between French and Spanish. Spanish is a phonetic language. It's read the way it's spelled, and French is not that way. But once you get to a point where you've heard French enough, you will understand the general leanings of the words.
Mm-hmm. I think also for specific tips, like the French R was like the bane of every French student's existence, and like every French learner. And I think a lot of the pronunciation will come with time and practice, but also listening to it, hearing it, whether it be talking to somebody or on recordings or videos or podcasts. I think it's also a good way to do that. I was going to say also there's the Radio France International, RFI.fr, and it has different levels of French, including beginner French. So if you want to start out, it's they'll explain the news to you at a very beginning French level. So maybe that'll help you with some pronunciation.
Would having a background in French allow for a volunteer to test directly into intermediate high? Yeah, so you definitely can, step off the plane and that first test that you take be like, test out, get intermediate high or even above. It just depends on your level. However, there are people on my stage in my group of volunteers who came and they studied really hard for the first test and they ended up testing out of French early and then later on they regretted that because they felt like they didn't have the French that they needed to have. So like, yeah, you definitely should study French, but trying to have like intermediate high be your immediate goal off the bat might not be the best thing depending on your own level. So it's like kind of self-reflection at this point. Like if you think you're intermediate high, go for it. If you think maybe you're like intermediate mid, intermediate low, maybe, not go for it as much and take a couple weeks and work on your French here. And then you can test out later when you take the test again.
Okay, how many hours a week will we have language courses during PST?
I think this is a Jane question. 8 hours.
So in terms of language, generally you have 1 out of 5.5 days a week dedicated purely to language, your Mondays. Mm-hmm. And then on most other days, you're going to have minimally 1, sometimes 2 hours of French a day. And then on Saturdays, you're again going to have pretty much of that is going to be dedicated to language. So obviously it's very language intensive purposely because you cannot swear in as a volunteer until you have met your language level. Even if you test into intermediate high or above, you will still have that many hours of language every week. It'll just be that the language you will be focused on will be a different language. So I think as Ty alluded to, language really is the key to integration. And Togo is not a country in which you will have a lot of English speakers outside of the capital, and even within the capital, they are somewhat limited. So we have a very strong reason for emphasizing language throughout pre-service training.
Sure, bring your fiddle. People will love it. Bring your ukulele. Bring it on.
Yeah, as far as it is off topic, but as far as instrumental music goes, totally people love it. And I've never heard of a volunteer who brought their instrument and has regretted it. So if you are really into it, go for it.
Yeah, great tip on French learning. My university had all kinds of French events, and most of them included wine and cheese. So go to them.
Yeah. Yep, that's 3 months. Okay, so you'll have language learning, intensive language learning for the first 3 months, which is called PST or pre-service training.
Okay.
This is shaping up to be a very musical PST.
Yeah.
Fascinating. If you guys want to learn some songs in French before you come, that would be impressive.
That'd be very impressive.
Since there are no questions on the queue right now, I have a question for you guys. Have you guys started a Facebook group yet?
Yeah, I think that's the last one.
Yes, you have. What's the name of this group? I'm allowed to ask. I wanted to write in your Facebook group today, like, hey guys, remember there's a video call tonight, and then I couldn't find it.
Oh, okay, that's why we can't find it.
PCV Togo 2019. We'll search for it.
Everybody get on that group.
Yeah.
We can have, that group's a great place to ask questions about like packing and things like that, more specific things that we might not have time to talk about during these videos, these chats.
Quick. How many of you have already started learning French, curiously?
Oh, nice. Duolingo, yeah.
Cool.
Okay, good. I think it's really smart to start in advance.
Yeah. It should be fun for the moment, like it's a new toy.
Yeah. And like I said, like French is also going to a certain extent, it's going to help you understand the culture of Togo. Not fully, of course, because that you'd need local languages for that. But you'll understand some cultural nuances with French as well, I think.
It's also fun to get started on local language, so you can be a part of your community and their world.
Je pense que c'est très différent avec.
So quick question, how will we be gaining access to Learning Space?
Yeah, so Learning Space will be live tomorrow, and I think that, Rebecca, you can correct me, I think you'll send out information via email on how to connect.
That's right.
Okay, yeah, so we finalized most of the stuff tonight, or we will finalize everything tonight, and then tomorrow Rebecca will send you out everything you need to know.
Do you recommend an easy song for us to learn before we arrive? That's a teach question. Do you guys have like
Oh, a song?
songs in class? Or I guess it have to be French songs.
Some popular songs that I did in my classes that students loved would be "We Will Rock You."
Wait, I think she wants French songs.
Oh, French songs.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I took that back.
Sorry, we will rock
Okay.
you.
Yeah, I don't know that one in French. That's embarrassing. There are YouTube videos of French kids songs.
Yeah, but like Togo's context. No, I don't know. Like my community, when they play songs, you know, drums and guitars and flutes and things like that, it's all in Kanye. So like,
Oh, the Togolese national anthem.
that's a great idea.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There's Alouette Radio too online. I used to listen to that in high school when I was learning French. Hardest part of PST for each of you.
For me, definitely the language coming in at the bottom, and then our stage was the first one that had to get this inter-high, and so it felt like there was a lot of pressure to get there because we were the first ones who had to move up from inter-mid to inter-high, and I just felt like starting off at the bottom, novice, low, it felt at the time impossible, but it was like, I don't know, but it was fine. You know, you make it, you work hard, you make it, so.
I'm gonna feel this one here. I'm sorry. Off the top of my head, I can't remember.
The hardest part of PST for me, I really enjoyed PST, but it's difficult just because you have a lot of, your days get kind of long, and you're always learning lots of new information. I think though, like PST wasn't hard. It's just like I wasn't used to such a jam-packed schedule coming from university. So I think the transition from university life to scheduled PST was a little bit difficult, but it wasn't bad at all.
Yeah, I think that was the same for me. I felt a bit more fatigued than usual because of how often I had to be turned on and present for sessions. But otherwise, it was enjoyable learning a new language and meeting my friends and hanging with my host family.
I remember thinking, like my first month of PST, that I've never in my life had to actively try so hard to stay healthy. Like I remember thinking, I have to drink this water. If you don't drink this water, you'll get a headache because you'll be dehydrated. Or I'd get a cut on my foot. If I don't take care of this cut, it's going to become so much worse and it's going to get infected. So I think that's also a transitional aspect to think about, is being actively staying healthy. Yeah, so we have about 3 minutes until 6. Is there any last minute questions that you guys would like to ask about language learning? If not, Rebecca, you can go ahead and go to the last slide. Yeah, so thanks, Michael, for the playlist, Music Spotify Kids. Our next Skype conference call will be on March 28th. It'll be at noon your time, 5 p.m. our time, and we're going to be talking about core expectations of Peace Corps. Anything to add?
All right, thanks you guys.
Yeah, have a great lunch.
Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us, and I will send out the recording to this call a little bit later this afternoon. But this PowerPoint, as well as the recording, they'll all be on the Learning Space page tomorrow, so you'll be able to view them more in depth once you receive access to that. And as always, if you have any questions, please send them to togo@peacecorps.gov and continue working on your medical tasks and getting those visa applications in. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, guys.